February 24, 2023. This is the 2000 tick chart on the S&P 500 E-mini futures on the Thinkorswim platform. You don't have to watch the entire video. Just go down to the descriptions if you want to see where I took my trades, as well as kind of little setups or points of interest that I kind of pointed out for myself. So this is what the chart looked like today. There wasn't really a big catalyst or any kind of news event except for the core PCE number, which came out around 5:30 Pacific Standard, which is right around here. But before then, in the pre-market from the yesterday, it was already selling off. So it didn't really, the core PCE number when it came out right around here didn't really do all that much because it kind of spiked a little bit and kept going down. And so this is how my chart looked like today and where I took my trades. I took 3 trades. I'll go through them, and this is how I drew up my chart. So let me just kind of clear it up a little bit. Overall, it kind of looked like things just sold off, and then at the open, it traded within this gigantic trading range. And I did have the trading range tighter throughout the day, and then I kind of broke it up to smaller overlapping trading ranges. There's just kind of a lot of little trading ranges, little consolidation areas all over the place, as well as trend lines coming up, coming down, smaller, tighter trend lines here and there. But overall, you could say that all the price action was captured. I would say between, I guess 39.80 to about 39.49. So about 30 points of movement. So let's get into the trades, and I hope to go fast so it doesn't become too boring. So this is a pre-market. I saw this action going down, and so I kind of drew this guy first, and then I kind of met at the bottom, and I made the midline appear, which is kind of makes it kind of a 2-level trend channel. And this is just for my own insight. And I don't trade the pre-market because I'm not awake during this time because I'm in Pacific Standard, but I just draw it for myself. And I thought there might have been a measured move coming up. So I drew this guy, and it looked like clearly it was a consolidation. And I drew the second guy kind of starting right about here. But the measure move wasn't made because it just sold off, consolidated at the bottom, and then pretty much just kind of traded in the big trading range. So let's get it started. Price is open and is still trading in this trading range that I drew because I kind of drew it at the top here and at the bottom. I did have it tighter where this dotted line was initially because I thought this might have been an overshoot. But then I eventually dragged it up here, had the midline right there. So this is the first trade that I saw. Well, not really a trade, but just something I saw. We have a new high here, first entry long. It's coming up and makes a second entry long. This is actually very tight. And even though it's a decent signal bar right above the EMA, it closes near the bottom of the trading range. And so I don't know if I kind of think I might have missed this trade, but it was early in the day. There's only 2 minutes in, so it hit the bottom. Who knows if it's going to keep going down or not. EMA is horizontal. It is at the bottom of the trading range, so I thought it was a decent trade to take, but I left it alone. So I would say it's kind of a missed trade. Prices continue moving. I don't see any good clean setups that I like. You could argue that this is a second entry long, but this is kind of a not the best signal bar. Maybe if it closed a little bit higher, it might have been worth a shot, but I didn't like it. I did draw this ascending trend channel just to kind of see if things are going to move up. Prices continue moving down, and just a reminder that this is my larger trading range that I eventually ended up with. So it'll come into play later, but I'm just, because it was kind of tighter at the beginning, but I don't want to readjust it at this point. So prices continue moving down. I do have first entry long here, continues down. You could argue it's like a first entry and there's a hidden second entry right here, second entry long, but I just didn't. I just left it alone. Prices continue moving down. And right about here, I see a potential setup coming up. Me projecting into the future. So here, okay, you can see technically there's like a first entry and then a second entry short, but it makes technically a new low here, not the lowest of the day, but a new low here. First entry short, second entry short. I thought this trade was a little bit aggressive because if I were to take it here, and I do have this trend channel drawn at this point, the bottom might have been a little bit tighter, but it's pretty close to EMA. EMA isn't that important in trading range, but I'm not even sure that this is a trading range yet. So even though there's a good valid signal bar, to take a short, I thought was aggressive and risky. And it turns out it would have worked, but I don't know at the time, and I haven't seen it enough because it only had really 2 touches up here, and this one was making its second touch. So who knows if it would have spiked upwards, and kind of reversed or corrected more. So prices keep going down. I see this coming up. I see another new low. This is actually a new low for the day. I see a first entry short, and then I see a second entry short potentially setting up. Now, I didn't take this trade either because this is a break of this trend trading range. It broke out, came back, and it pulled back. So it's like a failed breakout. It looks like it's coming back in, but it doesn't. It looks like EMA is having a little bit of influence. It comes back up, and here there's a potential secondary short setting up. Now, if I had taken this second entry short, it wasn't clear if this was going to be a second push one and a second push up two. So I certainly left this alone. However, I just waited a little bit and I saw a possible trade here as a lower high to the second entry short. So your first entry short, second entry short, potentially a lower high because it came up, it failed to break this guy. So it looks like sellers are running out, buyers are running out of steam, sellers might be coming in. And I thought if there's a trade here, I would want to confirm and just kind of wait till see what this next candle does. Now, when it broke out below, there is a potential trade here. I would have taken it had this actually closed a little bit higher. Once it came down this much, I don't know how much the EMA is influencing at this point. So I just kind of left that trade alone, but it looked like it is a possible trade right there because it does confirm the second entry short. So prices continue moving down. I'm just kind of sitting and watching and waiting. I do see this next trade set up. So whether you count this as a new high grouped together, it'd be a first entry long, then a second entry long. However, you do see a new low here. It's a first entry short, a potential second entry short setting up. So if I were to take this trade, I would probably see that EMA is kind of pushing prices back down. It's not super convincing yet, but it is pushing prices back down. An entry would have been one tick below the green signal bar right here. I would have put my trade right here because it is kind of getting to the low and there might be enough room back down to the trading range down here. So I decided not to take the trade, but if I were, that's kind of where I would put my entry. And once it would have picked me up here, and I certainly wouldn't have waited for this to close to take an entry down here. So it would have been just like a trade that I missed on. Now, after I see this close down, unfortunately, had I been more aware, I could have put my entry one tick below and it might have failed me here. And I probably would have gotten my core profit. But again, that was just a missed trade. Unfortunately, I also was wondering because this was actually drawn further out. I chopped this down later in the day when I noticed that it doesn't need to be there anymore, just to not clutter up my screen. But when it was coming down here on this green bar, I also was wondering if it was going to bounce off this midline. But once this trigger bar closed, I should have maybe taken a chance and put my entry one tick below this signal bar like I thought it would, because it is a failed second entry long. If I counted this together as one group, first entry long, second entry long, and then a second entry short. So it was worth a shot at in hindsight. But unfortunately, I wasn't prepared. I didn't think it through, and it was a missed trade. So prices continue moving down. And I eventually draw this trend trading range because it was up here, and then I drew it down to here, and then eventually I parked it down here because when it touched once and it touched the second time here, that's where I kind of settled like, okay, it's probably way down here. It's also forming its own little mini trading range here. So it's obeying price action right now. It's in the trading range. I don't see any good clean setups that I like. Right here, I do see a potential first entry short and a second entry short. It's also a failed breakout. Now, when I saw this, it's a good signal bar and it's coming back into the trading range. So I thought this was a possible trade, but I wasn't ready. I mean, because this is a double bottom. So my trade entry would have been one tick below here, one tick below pretty much these two guys, but I just wasn't ready. The prices flashed down, it would have worked. So I'm kind of more aware when I saw it and I saw, okay, there's a potential trade coming up. This is where I actually took my first trade. I saw first entry short, second entry short. And I saw this come up and I'm thinking it might either be a lower high or it's going to make another leg up. Because this one leg up might make a second leg up because it failed to come all the way back down to the trading range. So when this candle came down, I thought, okay, obviously this lower range looks like it's playing out. I put my entry right here, one tick below this green bar. But I also grouped my trade together. I didn't think there was enough oomph to go all the way down, so I didn't go for a runner. I just took the whole position off right here. This is where I got out. So it was a pretty, reasonable trade. I didn't want to risk trying to push it all the way back down to here. I mean, if I had a runner, I would probably still be in it and keeping it trailing it one tick below. But I don't know if how valid this trading range is. It could hit bottom and come back up, or it could break through. So I just decided to take the entire position off. And you see it kind of comes down, breaks below the low of the day, comes flashing back up. You could say this is a new high, first entry long, second entry long. So potentially a trade here, but I didn't like the looks of this signal bar. So I kind of left that trade alone. And I'm okay with that, you know. Then prices continue moving. I do see a new low here, first entry short. You know, I have this labeled here, but that's always after the trade has occurred. But I was watching it carefully, and when I saw this flash down, I saw a potential second entry short, also a fail breakout, because at one time I also had this trend line after all these confirmations. I was considering maybe it's actually up here, but the problem with this signal bar is it's coming back into the EMA, but it's really, really big because this signal bar is technically this one. This is the signal bar, and this is the confirmation, or this is the actual second entry short forming. So it went up, and it had to come all the way back down. This is the first break of this trend channel. So if this bar wasn't so bullish, if it was just a little bit kind of up here, but not this huge amount that this so much effort was already put in by the sellers to bring this all the way back down. I just didn't feel that comfortable. Plus, it closed outside of this current existing trading range, even though I had it up here, thinking like it might be up there. I also considered it to actually just be down here because there's more touches, more confirmations there. So unfortunately, I just left that trade alone. But looked like after this huge, strong bearish momentum, it might have been just kind of I guess a trade worth taking, but I wasn't comfortable also putting my stop way up here. So I mean, the more I see these, probably the more confident I'll be in the future trades, or just I need to have a better feel of what's going on. Because granted, prices are feeling pretty bearish from the open, or actually from the pre-market, but then it's consolidating. It's kind of stair-stepping its way down. So over here, even though it's a trade that worked, I wasn't 100% confident, and you can never be 100% confident, but I wasn't confident enough to take that trade. Prices continue moving down. It's testing the lows. At this point, I was considering dragging this down, but I actually dragging this trading range low of this trading range down further. But I actually liked here so many touches and just treated this as an overshoot or undershoot, however you want to look at it. Just pretty much a break and it came back in. Prices continue moving up. I draw this trading channel now because I have one touch, two touch, and I had several touches up here. So I kind of like that. Comes down. This is a first entry long, second entry long. Now, unfortunately, I missed this trade because I think it was possibly a good trade here because there's a good signal bar. Look at this. It's like double top. Zoom in a little bit. Double top. It closed at the high, and it's the first breakout, you know, of this lower trend line. So it might, and the EMA is holding. So even though it broke out, it's coming right back in. So it closed above. It had a good characteristic, and I thought it was probably a pretty good trade I've taken. Fortunately, I think I was mentally fully there to see it and take and execute it in time. Prices continue up. We have an overshoot now, so I'm just kind of aware, okay, there's an overshoot. It's coming back down. And I see another potential second entry long because it depends on how you counted it. You grip this because every time it makes a double top, you count this as one. So it could be a first entry long, or you could count it from here as a first entry long and a potential second entry long because it's a pretty good signal bar. It's right at the EMA. Unfortunately, the way I counted it was I counted it as new high, grouped together, first entry long. Now, if I had counted the other way, more, I guess, ambitious or aggressive, I would have said first entry long, second entry long, potentially setting up, put my trade one tick above because it hit the EMA, came right back. And also everything is respecting EMA. It's also bouncing off the bottom of this ascending trend channel. So in hindsight, I should have taken the trade because right there, it would have scooped me up and probably hit my runner, but it would have been a pretty decent trade. But at the time, I considered it as first entry long, and then I missed the trade. So hindsight's 2020. Just chalk it up to experience. Just think about this a little bit more carefully next time because it was a couple of things going for it. 2 key entry points, good signal bar. Setup was pretty nice and clean. Fortunately, I just didn't read it correctly. I do see another trade here. First entry long, second entry long. Now this one's creating a trading range. This one, I admit, is a little ambitious because I said, okay, well, it broke down below this trading range and it's closing relatively decently. So I decided to take that trade. It's a good signal bar. It's bottom of the trading range. It's with trend. It looks like this new extreme was made here. And it looks like after this break, it wants to make a new extreme. So I took the trade. Ends up being pretty good. Again, I didn't have a runner, so I took the whole core off immediately. I actually, I had my price target a little bit higher. I take it back. I actually, because usually when I enter a trade, it sets my core profit and it sets my runner way up here. And it got my core profit filled right on this entry and right on the fill of this same candle. And I didn't have enough time to drag my runner up high enough. So it stopped out my runner prematurely, but still a pretty good trade because you look at this 839 timestamp, 840, and this is also 841. So this happened relatively quickly. So as another second green trade of the day, which is kind of nice. Then prices continue moving up. It's kind of violating this trading channel right now. So at the time I thought, well, maybe there's a different one. I drew one here, but it didn't fit as nicely up here. So I just maintained this, treated it as an overshoot. It's coming back into range. So this is the second overshoot. Looks like the trading channel got hit twice, and then it came back and touched the top of this trading channel again. And it's holding. So I was like, okay, this is valid. It just happens to have 2 points of breaks. So it keeps going. I'm watching, and I see a potential first entry long, second entry long. Now, this is a second entry, a failed second entry. Now, I didn't take this because in order to have this trade work out, if you watch, you'd have to have like, you could either be a second entry long, but it turns out to be a failed second entry long because on this next candle it breaks down. So here, certainly if you wanted to take an entry long, you would have watched this candle close, but it closed below the EMA. So it would have been risky to take a second entry because you would have gotten filled on this candle right about here. It probably wouldn't have gotten your scalp. Now this candle broke right back down. So I was watching for a failed second entry because I noticed when this one closed, this one opened and closed, I thought, okay, well, I could put one trade here. I'd either have to take it on the engulfing or I'd have to see what happens to this guy. Because when this guy closed, it confirms that the second entry long fails. But to take a entry down here would have been risky. So the only entry I thought would have been safe would actually be one tick below this original candle. But I didn't take the trade because it would have worked. So you would have shorted here, and now it's flashing back up. And now I would have been worried, like, is it going to break above the EMA? It would have broken above the EMA. But depending on where your stop is, you could have had it up here. You would have been safe because it is setting up for a lower high, which I think would have been a more safer entry to have taken because it confirmed second entry long that failed. It's a good signal bar. Also, it's closed below the EMA. Both the open and close are below the EMA, and it's rejecting off this smaller trend channel coming down. Because right here I did draw this, and it was cutting through these guys, and I thought, okay, that's pretty cool, and as well as touching the bottom. So this would have been a better entry, but I was watching this, and I wasn't quite thinking taking a short, or I should have had my order more prepared and had one right here as a possible entry to go flash back down. As you can see, it would have filled you, made you a little nervous, but your trade, if you take the second entry, if you took the lower high, it would have been probably up here, and you would have been fine because it would have gotten your core profit, and then it kept going down. Depending on how you trailed your runner, you would have either got stopped out or you would have just kind of sat through this mess. I didn't do either. So then prices kept moving. It goes into another trading range. I didn't have this trend channel going down established yet, so I only have this trend channel here, and I have this trading range established now because I'm thinking, okay, kind of touched, I drew a support here, and I just kind of arbitrarily brought the top of it around here. I actually had it lower, and I dragged it up later. And I saw, just to give me a little bit of guidance of where prices might be reacting, there's a new low, first entry short, and then it breaks out of this trading range. And it's potentially setting up a second entry short because it's a pretty decent signal bar. And then prices come down, breaks through the EMA. I didn't take that trade though, just because it's a good signal bar and there was enough room to the EMA, but I just didn't feel quite super confident about this at this point. In hindsight, with more experience, I would have probably read it better, saying like, okay, there's a push up, it's push down, made one leg down, pull back, second leg down, pull back. It's hard to really know what's going to happen. And remember, I don't have this trend channel drawn yet. I do have this guy, and I think I was playing with the idea of like a support here, but I wasn't super confident that this trend channel was up here because it could have been down here, it could have been a spike in a channel, but as you can see, it doesn't quite fit super nicely. It shows up later once this forms and prices continue moving down, but it was a second entry short failed breakout, goes back, breaks through the trading range now, continues down. No trade for me. I missed that trade, but that's okay. Continue moving down. It's now I have, because I draw this guy at this point, and it touches once, twice, and then touches down here. So I'm pretty confident there's a bigger trend, descending trend happening. And I also had this drawn at one point, just kind of see where prices are moving. And of course, then I draw this guy. This guy shows up a little bit later because it's actually pretty tight. The lower part of this was actually up here. And then later I dragged it down to the bottom as the day progressed. And you're seeing its trading range. It's coming up. It respects the EMA, but I didn't see a good trade here, even though it's coming up to the EMA. Prices continue to move. And I'm just sitting on my hands. I'm watching. I do see a hidden second entry long here, but I just didn't like the idea of it being a hidden second entry long because it's technically a new high, first entry long here. And then you could say that, you know, it opened here, came up, closed here, and then it opened here, came down. So technically, I guess it could be a second entry long on a smaller time frame, but I just didn't want to deal with that because even though it ended up being a pretty okay trade, this wick is pretty strong. So I just had this kind of chopped off a little bit lower and made a very clean first entry, second entry. I would have taken this trade because this bounce off is very nice, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And I don't have the experience to read into it that quickly in real time. And so then I do see a new low here, first entry short, and setting up to potentially be a second entry short, which would have worked, but I didn't like the signal bar here. It's just too neutral. Had it been just a little bit set up a little bit cleaner, then I think it would have been worth it because it came here, pushed down, kind of pushed up once, up to here, came back, pushed up a second time. So it's like two pushes, and it looked like this uptrend of this trend channel has played out. So this is kind of a iffy trade. I mean, granted, if I was super aggressive, I might have taken it. And prices continue moving around. I don't see much good second entries or price actions or anything. I don't see very, very visible clean entries for me to take. So I'm just continue sitting on my hands. Prices continue moving up. It has formed this trading range. I draw this trend channel going up, and I notice it's breaking through the top of this trend channel now. Excuse me, this trading range. I thought it might reject here, but it broke out and broke through. Just kind of keeping that aware. So let's see. Broke up, came back down. Looks like it might come back into the trading range, this big one. So I'm just watching. There's no real clean setup yet. It makes a first entry long. And now technically it could make a second entry long here if you're counting the first entry long and it's pull back, break back up. And you could have said, okay, then as soon as it breaks down below this guy, it'd be a failed second entry, but I didn't count it that way. I just said, okay, this is potentially a new low, first entry short, second entry short here. It might come all the way back down to here, but I didn't feel super confident in taking this trade because I wanted the signal bar to be closer to the EMA and close more bullish and not in the middle of the candle. Excuse me. It's new entry. Let me start over. This is a new low, first entry short, second entry short. And the reason I didn't take this trade is even though it came back down, there's enough room to get to here and bounce, but I also was concerned maybe the EMA might cause a bounce. So I just wanted it closer to break through or be closer to the EMA to feel confident in the second entry short. Turns out it would have worked. And here I took my third trade. So it's like a new high, first entry long, if I count it as very deliberate, very clean, second entry long. Now it's riding against the top of this trading range. And this is a pretty, it came up and came down a closed low. So even though it's a second entry long, I was suspicious that it might be a failed second entry long. So what I did was I saw it touched here, it could bounce back up. And I suspected all these people that went long, they probably have their stops down here, because technically if this is a first entry long, first entry short, second entry short, and it is like a first entry long up to here, second entry long, I suspected there was a bunch of people with stops down here, one tick below. And so I thought, okay, this is a good signal bar, closed, good signal bar to go short. It hasn't touched this yet. There's no harm right now to put one tick below to see if it comes flashing through. Flashes through because the EMA is rejecting. And so I put my order here at 39.75.75, which is right about here, thinking, okay, I will at least get swept up and it might bounce off of this potential trading range, which I drew off of this line. So I did get filled, which is nice. I get out, and there's no runner, and it immediately kind of reverses itself. It bounces, because this could be considered, it could either bounce off of here, break through, or bounce off of here. So this is a little bit riskier of a trade. It ends up being kind of a break-even trade, because once it broke down below, I lost my nerve, so I kind of dragged my entry to just one tick below my entry just to get a little bit of kind of a break-even free trade. And I only went in with one contract to just to see if this would work. And I got stopped out, but it's okay. And prices come up. It's in the trading range. I see a potential right here, a first entry short. Technically, there's a second entry short here when it broke down, but I count it as one leg, then the second leg. So I said first entry short, second entry short. It's a failed breakout of this trading range. And so it's a good signal bar. It's kind of an okay trade, but there's just too much congestion back here, so I didn't feel that I was confident in taking that entry. Ends up, it would have worked, but it's okay. It just goes down. It's now getting pretty much close to the end of the day. I don't take any more trades now, but I didn't take any more trades after this one, but I see the trend channel going down, just good practice. Chops around, and I marked this one just because it's too late in the day to try to take this trade, but I do like the setup, because had this happened earlier in the day where I'm not going to have only 17 minutes to figure this out, I like that it touched 2 times here and also touched up here. So when I saw this form, I said, okay, there's a new low here, first entry short, and it's hitting the EMA. It came back down. There's enough room for the EMA, to the bottom of the trend channel. I would have put my entry either here or maybe a little bit inside, but I like the way that this was setting up. I didn't take the trade though, just because, as I said, it's too late in the day. And as I saw this 4 touches down here, or 3 touches, I said, this is a very clean trend channel. Like, if any more setups happen, it's certainly a good learning experience. And then of course it breaks down, comes up, EMA is holding. Now it's just definitely too late to try to take any trades, because it's the end of the day and it gets too choppy. But it's just something I want to point out to myself that, okay, if this was a different context, maybe earlier in the day, I would have taken that trade, but since it's so close to the close, I definitely didn't want to take that trade. So that's how I saw the charts today. Just chalk another one up for experience, and that's it.